"You're acting possessive for no reason," she told me when I noticed the way she kept crossing lines. I backed off without arguing. Now that I've completely detached, she's the one questioning why I don't react or care anymore. "You're acting possessive for no reason," she said, not even looking up from her phone. I didn't say a word, because what she called possessive was me noticing, and what she called no reason was a list of things I had watched pile up for months, one on top of the other, until the stack was too tall to ignore. I just nodded, took a breath, and backed off. That was the last time I ever reacted. I didn't realize it then, but that quiet nod was the moment everything between us started dying. Not loudly, not with a fight, not with slammed doors or broken things. Quietly, the way a fire goes out when you stop feeding it air. She's standing in the kitchen now, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed, watching me make coffee like I'm a stranger she's trying to figure out. "You've been really distant lately." I pour the coffee. "Don't turn around. You okay?" "Yeah," I tell her. "I'm fine. And the wild part? I actually am." Let me take you back. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. I'm 28. She's 26. We'd been together for almost 2 years when she said that line to me. The possessive line, the no reason line. And honestly, I'd been waiting for something like it for a while. Not because I wanted to fight, but because I'd felt something shifting for months and had no language for it yet. That sentence gave me the language. We met through mutual friends, the easy way, the way that feels like it was always going to happen. She was funny, sharp, had this way of making every room feel like her room without trying too hard. I liked that about her. A lot. And for the first year, things were genuinely good. Then the second year started. It didn't announce itself. That's the thing no one tells you about relationship erosion. It doesn't show up at the front door with its bags packed. It slips in through a window you left cracked open, settles in quietly, and by the time you smell something off, it's already made itself at home. The first thing I noticed was her phone. Not in a paranoid, checking her messages kind of way. Just the way she'd angle it. The way she'd laugh at something, and then the laugh would stop the second she saw me looking. The way she'd leave the room to take certain calls. I didn't say anything. I figured I was reading into it. Then there was the guy she mentioned. Callum, a coworker. She brought him up the way you bring up someone who's been on your mind more than you want to admit. Casually, but too casually. The kind of casual that takes effort. Callum made everyone laugh so hard today at the team meeting. Callum recommended this podcast. You should listen to it. Callum thinks the same thing I do about that movie. I knew I wasn't crazy. I noticed. I said nothing. And then one Saturday, she came home from what she'd said was a work thing, a team lunch, and she seemed lighter than she had in weeks. Animated. Happy in a way she hadn't been with me in a while. I asked how it was. Really good, actually. Really good. She smiled to herself while she took off her jacket. That smile wasn't for me. I knew it the way you know things you don't want to know. I still said nothing. Because what was I going to say? You seem too happy. That's not a sentence. That's not an accusation. That's just a man sitting with a feeling that has no clean edges. So I sat with it. And then, about 2 weeks later, I saw it. Not a message. Not a photo. Just a name on her screen, lighting up, and her picking up that phone so fast I felt it in my chest before I understood why. She saw me see it. And she tilted the screen away. Just slightly. Just enough. I didn't say anything in that moment either. But something in me made a note. Filed it. Set it somewhere I could come back to. The weeks kept moving. The Callum mentions kept coming, sometimes dressed differently. A colleague, a work friend, someone from her department, but always him. Always the same energy underneath the words. I wasn't angry. Not exactly. I was paying attention. And when I eventually said something, gently, no accusation in my voice, just, "Hey, I've noticed you bring him up a lot. Is everything all right between us?" She looked at me like I'd done something wrong. "I bring up lots of people from work. You bring him up more than anyone else," I pointed out. "That's because he's funny and we talk a lot. That's not a crime." I didn't say it was. "You're acting like it is." I let it sit there for a second. "I'm just talking to you about something I noticed. That's all." She put her phone face down on the table, arms crossed. "I think you're being possessive," she said. "And I don't know where this is coming from, but it's not a good look." There it was. Possessive. That word dropped between us like a stone into still water, and I watched the ripples move outward, and I thought, so that's how this works. I express something I've observed, and the conversation becomes about my behavior. Not what I noticed. My behavior. I nodded. "Okay," I said, and I dropped it. Here's something I want you to understand about that moment, because it matters for everything that comes after. I didn't drop it because she convinced me I was wrong. I dropped it because I understood something, clearly, maybe for the first time. She wasn't interested in the conversation I was trying to have. She was interested in shutting it down. And there's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes with trying to have a real conversation with someone whose entire strategy is to make you feel like having the conversation is the problem. I didn't want to fight. I never wanted to fight. But I also stopped wanting to explain myself. And when you stop wanting to explain yourself to someone, something changes. Something quiet and fundamental. I didn't know how to name it yet. The next few weeks I was different. Not distant, not cold, just careful. I watched more than I spoke. I noticed more than I reacted. I kept being present in the relationship, but I stopped leaning into it emotionally the way I had before. She didn't notice. Or if she did, she didn't mention it. The Qley mentions continued. I absorbed them without comment now, the way you learn to breathe through something that used to make you flinch. And then one evening she mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that Qley was going through a rough patch. Some personal stuff. She didn't want to get into details. And that she'd been texting with him a lot lately because he doesn't really have anyone to talk to. That's kind of you, I said. She looked at me like she was waiting for more. You're not going to make it weird? Why would I? She blinked. A small pause. You usually do. I went back to what I was reading. That was the beginning of the real shift. She'd gotten used to me reacting. She'd built a certain architecture in her head around my concern, my questions, my carefully measured observations. And now I'd removed the structure she was building against. I wasn't suppressing anything. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't biting my tongue or holding back emotion that was bubbling underneath. I was genuinely detaching. Not dramatically. Not as punishment. Just as a natural consequence of what had happened over those months. You press on something long enough and eventually it goes numb. You call someone's legitimate concern possessive enough times, and eventually they stop having the concern. Not because the concern was wrong, but because they've accepted that their concern has no home here. That's what was happening to me. I was accepting it. Things between us, surface level, stayed normal. We still had dinner together. Still went to movies. Still did the weekend things couples do when they're performing the shape of a relationship they've stopped fully inhabiting. But something in her started tuning into the frequency of my absence. She started touching my arm more, reaching for my hand, sitting closer than usual. And I let her. I wasn't pulling away physically. But I also wasn't reaching back with the same urgency I used to. She noticed. One night after we'd watched something together and she'd leaned into my shoulder the whole time, she pulled back and looked at me. You feel far away. I'm right here. That's not what I mean. I looked at her. What do you mean? She seemed to search for words. Like, I don't know. You're here, but you're not here. You're not. She trailed off. Reacting. I offered. Something moved across her face. Too quick to name. Yeah. Kind of. Wasn't that what you wanted? I asked. Calm. No edge in my voice. She didn't answer right away. I wanted you to stop being so intense about things that didn't matter, she said carefully. Right, I said. And I did. She looked at me for a long moment. It feels different though. It is different, I told her. And I meant it as exactly what it was, a fact, not a threat. A description, not a warning. She pulled her knees up and looked away. I could tell she was unsettled. I went to bed. She stayed on the couch. The next morning she asked me if I was happy. I thought about that for a second before I answered. I'm okay, I said. That's not the same as happy. No, I agreed. It's not. She stood in the kitchen doorway with her coffee, and something in her expression I couldn't quite read. It was somewhere between concern and something that looked almost like fear. The kind of fear that comes not from danger, but from realizing something is slipping. What's happening with us? She asked. What do you think is happening? I asked you first. I looked at her for a moment. Then I looked at my coffee. I think, I said slowly, that I stopped reacting to things. And I think that's the first time you've noticed me. The silence after that was the loudest thing in the apartment. She brought up Qley that night. Not to mention him, exactly. More like, to test the water. She mentioned he'd texted her something funny and laughed while showing me her phone, which she'd never done before, the showing me the phone part. And I glanced at it, smiled politely, and went back to what I was doing. No edge, no reaction, just a smile and a return to my own world. She watched me do that. You really don't care? She asked. Not accusatory, genuinely asking. Should I? I mean before you. Before I was possessive for no reason. Another silence. She put her phone down. I shouldn't have said it like that. You said it the way you meant it, I told her. That's okay. I learned from it. What did you learn? I thought about how to answer that honestly. That the things that matter to me aren't always things you want to take seriously, I said. So I stopped expecting you to. She looked like I'd said something that hurt her. I hadn't tried to, but I hadn't tried not to either. I was just being accurate. Here's where I have to tell you something about myself. The thing I probably should have examined way earlier than I did. I am not someone who escalates. I don't raise my voice, don't make accusations without evidence, don't chase conflict. When something bothers me, I either talk about it once, clearly and calmly, or I let it go. That's how I'd always been. And I'd spent years in previous situations, not with her, but before her, being told that this made me cold, unavailable, hard to read, that I should react more, show more, that my calmness felt like a wall. So I'd worked at it. Over a long time, I worked at being more emotionally available, more present, more willing to name things I noticed instead of just swallowing them quietly. And with her, I had done exactly that. I'd noticed something. I'd named it. Carefully, without accusation, just, I see this, I want to talk about it. And she'd called it possessive. And I had stood there, all that work sitting in my chest, and I had heard her say that, and I had filed it. Not with anger, with information. This is what happens here when I do that. Noted. A few days after the kitchen conversation, she wanted to do something together. Just us, no phones. Dinner at this place we used to go to in the early months. I agreed. Dinner was fine. Good food. Easy conversation. She made me laugh twice, which used to be something I took for granted and now noticed differently. Like something I was observing rather than just experiencing. Halfway through the meal, she said, "This feels like it used to." Like what? Like when we first started. When you were just with me. Present. I'm present now, I said. You know what I mean. I didn't know what she meant. She meant the version of me that was emotionally invested. Leaning in. Reaching. The version that cared enough to get bothered when things felt off. She missed that version. I understood that. But I couldn't find my way back to him on command. That's not how it works. You can't call someone back to a version of themselves after you've taught them that version is unsafe. I lifted my glass. I'm glad tonight feels good, I said. And I meant it. I was glad. It was a good evening. But I sat in it the way you sit in someone else's good memory. Warmly present, not fully belonging. The real rupture came about 10 days later. She'd been out on a Friday evening. Drinks with people from work, she'd said. And she came home later than expected, which I genuinely had no problem with. I was on the couch reading. She came in, dropped her bag, and stopped when she saw me. "You didn't text," she said. "You didn't tell me a time to expect you." "I know, but usually you," she stopped. "Usually I what?" She sat down in the armchair across from me. Not beside me, across. "Usually you check in. Like, how's it going or on your way? You didn't this time. I figured you'd text me if you needed something." She was quiet. "You used to care where I was," she said. And there it is. There's the line. The one that makes everything visible. "I used to care and you told me I was being possessive," I said. Not with heat, just with accuracy. Asking if I'm on my way home isn't possessive. Noticing a pattern with a specific person and saying something about it once, calmly, also isn't possessive, I said. But that's what you called it. She looked at her hands. "I was frustrated," she said. "I know. I didn't mean. I think you meant exactly what you said in the moment you said it," I told her. "I'm not holding it against you. But I also can't unhear it. And I made adjustments. Those adjustments feel like punishment. That's not what they are. Then what are they?" I closed my book. "Calibration," I said. "I calibrated to what you said you wanted. Someone who doesn't make things into a big deal. Someone who doesn't react. I became that. And now that looks wrong to you too." Silence. "I don't know what you want from me," she said finally. Her voice had a crack in it. "I know," I said. "I think that's been true for a while." She cried that night. Not hysterically, just quietly, sitting in the armchair, crying in that contained way people do when they don't want to make a scene but can't stop it either. I sat with her. I put my hand on her arm. I wasn't cold about it. I'm not a cold person, and this wasn't about being cold. But I also couldn't manufacture the particular kind of distress that used to come with her tears. The urgency. The what do I need to do? How do I fix this feeling? That feeling had been one of my most reliable emotional responses for almost 2 years. It was gone. Not blocked. Not suppressed. Just absent. She looked at me through it. "You're not scared," she said. "Of what?" "Of losing me." I thought about how to answer that honestly. "I think," I said slowly, "that the version of me that would have been scared of losing you spent a long time asking to be seen and being told he was too much. And somewhere in that, The fear turned into something quieter. Quieter like what? Like acceptance. She wiped her face. Acceptance of what? Of whatever happens. That was 3 weeks ago. We're still together. Technically. The word together doing a lot of heavy lifting. She's been different since that night. More attentive in some ways. Asks how my day was. Initiates conversation. Puts her phone down when I'm in the room. I've noticed all of it. I've received it without analysis, without suspicion, without the corresponding swell of hope that used to accompany any sign of her reaching toward me. The Callum mentions have stopped. Almost completely. I don't know if that means anything. I don't particularly need to know if it means anything. That's the thing I keep coming back to. I genuinely don't need to know. That absence of need, where there used to be this almost physical hunger for clarity, for reassurance, for things to make sense. It's strange to move through the world without it. Like getting a nerve removed. You know there's space where something used to be, but it doesn't hurt anymore. She asked me a few days ago, standing in the kitchen with that same expression, the one that sits between concern and fear. Do you still love me? I looked at her for a moment. What made you ask that? You used to say it all the time, she said. Without being asked. Just say it. And you don't do that anymore. I stopped a lot of things I used to do automatically, I said. Because I was told I was too much. Saying I love you isn't too much. I know. But it came from the same place in me that everything else came from. And I turned that place down. I can't turn down one thing and leave everything else running. She looked at me like I'd explained something she'd broken and was only now understanding how. Can you turn it back up? She asked. The most honest question she'd ever asked me. I thought about it. I don't know, I said. I think that place doesn't work on a dimmer switch. It's either running or it isn't. And right now it isn't. Right now it isn't. She nodded slowly. She looked like she was doing math in her head, the kind of math where you keep getting an answer you don't want and keep checking your work hoping to find a different one. Is this fixable? She asked. I don't know that either, I said. But I think the more important question is whether you understand what happened. I called you possessive, she said quietly. You called me possessive, I agreed. When I came to you with something I'd noticed, once, without anger, without accusation, just as a conversation. And instead of having the conversation, you made the conversation about something being wrong with me. And I took that in. And I adjusted. And now you don't care. Now I'm not afraid. I corrected her. Those aren't the same thing. I've thought about this a lot in the weeks since everything started shifting. About what it means to be told the way you love is a problem. Because that's what it was, when you strip it back. I wasn't monitoring her. I wasn't controlling her schedule or her friendships or her choices. I was paying attention. I was noticing the person I was in a relationship with the way you naturally notice someone when you're genuinely present with them. And the attention itself got labeled as the problem. And here's the part that I couldn't name for a long time, but can name now. When you're told your attention is a problem, one of two things happens. Either you fight for the right to pay attention, which just looks like what she called it, possessiveness, neediness, intensity, or you stop paying attention. And when you stop paying attention to someone, you stop being fully in the relationship with them. Not as revenge, not as a lesson, just as a consequence. You can't be told stop watching me so closely and then be expected to remain deeply invested. Investment is watching. Caring is noticing. They don't exist independently of each other. She wanted me less invested, less watchful, less close, and she got all of that. And now she wants to know where the version of me went that made her feel chosen every day. He's still here, just quiet, standing back, watching from a distance, the way she seemed to want. The irony I keep turning over is this. Callum, or whoever he was, whatever that situation was, I never needed certainty about it, was never the point. He was a symptom, a specific expression of something larger, which was that she was looking for something she wasn't finding in us, and instead of coming to me with that, she found it sideways and then defended the sideways finding by making my noticing the problem. Maybe nothing happened between them. Maybe it was all just emotional elsewhereness with nowhere to go. I don't know. I stopped needing to know. What I do know is that the moment she chose to address my concern by calling it possessiveness, she told me something real about how safe this relationship was for me. Not safe in a dangerous way, but safe in the way you need a relationship to be safe to stay open in it. To keep the doors open so someone else can walk through. She told me to close the door. I closed the door. And now she's standing outside it knocking. Last night she sat next to me on the couch, really close, her head almost on my shoulder, and she said, very quietly, I miss you. I'm right here, I said. Same thing I always say now. I know. Pause. That's what scares me. I didn't fill the silence after that. I let it sit. It was her sentence, her fear. It wasn't mine to fix or to chase away. After a while she said, "What would it take?" "For what?" "For you to come back. To be how you were." I thought about it for a real moment. Not dismissing the question. Actually thinking about it. "I don't know if that's the right question," I said. "The version of me that you're missing." He needed to feel like his perceptions mattered. Like when he noticed something and brought it to you, you'd engage with it instead of turning it into something being wrong with him. "I can do that," she said. "Maybe," I said. "But it's a different kind of hard now. Because now I'd have to learn to bring things to you again. And that's a kind of trust that I'm not sure I know how to rebuild from the inside." "Then what do we do?" "I don't know," I said. "But I think the first step is being honest that we're here. That this is where we are. Not where we were a year ago. Not where we could have been here. Right now." She lifted her head and looked at me. "Do you want to try?" she asked. And I looked at her. Really looked at her. This person I had loved loudly and openly for almost 2 years. This person who had made me laugh and who I had made plans with, and who had also, in one clean sentence, made me understand that the way I loved was inconvenient to her. And I felt something. Not the old fire. Not the urgency. But something. Something small and uncertain and alive. "I think I want to try," I told her. "And right now, that's as honest as I can be." She nodded. She didn't push for more than that. And maybe that was the most important thing she'd done in months. Accept an answer that wasn't the one she wanted, without calling it the wrong kind of answer. Maybe that was something. Or maybe I was just tired and it was late, and the small alive thing in my chest was just memory, just echo, just the ghost of what used to run so easily. I don't know yet. What I do know is this. The person who came to her calmly and said, "I've noticed something. Can we talk about it?" That person was trying to love her properly. Trying to stay present, stay honest, stay close in the way that closeness actually works, which is through paying attention. And she looked at that person and said, "You're too much." And that person made a decision that didn't announce itself, didn't arrive with a speech, didn't come with demands. He just got quieter and quieter and quieter until she could hear the silence from across the room. Until she started crossing that room toward him, asking where he went. He didn't go anywhere. He just stopped reaching. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes from being in a relationship and feeling unseen. But there's a different kind, quieter, stranger, that comes from being seen too late. From watching someone finally turn toward you at the exact moment you've stopped turning toward them. From receiving attention you used to need so badly you ached for it. And feeling almost nothing. Not satisfaction. Not victory. Just the ache of what could have been, standing in the room with both of you. She's looking at me like she's seeing me now. I just wish I knew if I still have anything left to give her to see. She walked past me this morning and touched my hand. Just briefly. The pat of her thumb across my knuckles. I looked up. She didn't say anything. Just looked at me for a second, and then went to make coffee. I sat with that feeling. Tried to name it. Couldn't. But it was there. Some things you lose in pieces so small you don't notice until there's almost nothing left. And some things come back the same way, piece by piece, too slow to see, until one day you look down and you're holding something again. I don't know which one this is yet, but for the first time in a long time, I'm not sure I need to.